Good afternoon, everybody. This is a live severe weather briefing, mainly for portions of the upper Midwest. We're going to discuss the tornado potential across western Wisconsin into far southeastern Minnesota. But first, I want to discuss the massive smoke plume that is invading the central U.S., and it just moved through Colorado area this morning, through the Denver area and the Front Range. The darker reds and the purples are very poor air quality there, and this poor air quality actually originated out near the Dixie Fire out in California, and an upper level low has brought this off to the east, and now you can see the advancing wall here of this smoke plume that is rapidly reducing visibility here across Colorado and western Nebraska, and there is even a fire up into Banner County in the Nebraska Panhandle as well that's been burning across the higher terrain up there. That's been causing some problems. Major drought conditions dominating the northern high plains and the Dakotas all the way up into Canada. Also having some very drought conditions dominating the northern high plains up there. We definitely need the rain up in eastern Montana, northeastern Wyoming, and across the Dakotas. And that fire in Banner County there in Nebraska certainly is a concern up there, given how dry everything is. So here you can see the loop of smoke here. This is the HRRR, and you can see that smoke advancing off to the east. Of course, the smoke is a lot worse out in California. That's where the source of the smoke is located. The Dixie Fire out there that very sadly destroyed the town of Greenville, California, out there in northern California to the northwest of Oroville. My storm chaser friend Brandon Clement has been covering that fire for like the last 3 weeks and was right there when the town of Greenville was hit by that firestorm. He reported that the roofs there were lifting off, getting peeled off by those very violent winds, definitely confirming that it was indeed a firestorm on the leading edge of that a wall of fire there that continues to expand. And now you can see the smoke march across the central U.S. and the northern U.S. and the central Canadian prairies. Some more fires up there into British Columbia as well. Look at all those red plumes there of smoke emerge up in southern British Columbia. They've also had a very difficult time with the wildfires so far this year. The northern high plains are definitely starting to ignite. Definitely some more smoke getting produced out there as well. But certainly some poor air quality out here. Here you can see the satellite imagery showing that advancing plume this morning across Colorado. So it definitely did cause a reduction in the air quality here. There you can see that plume advancing across the Colorado Front Range. Now it's moving across the high plains of northeastern Colorado. And this is the same trough that is causing the advancement of this smoke. This is actually the same trough that is going to lead to indirectly to some severe weather today. And it does look like the greatest chance for tornadoes is going to be in the northeastern portion of that risk up here along this enforced warm frontal zone, western Wisconsin, southeastern Minnesota, maybe far northeastern Iowa as well. There is still kind of a dying MCS out here across western Wisconsin that is going to help to enforce that boundary out there. But I wanted to show you some of the air quality issues that we're getting here right outside of my apartment, which is located just to the west of Denver. We definitely did have that smoke invade here. I'm thinking about going on a big mountain bike ride as well this morning, so I'm a little bit concerned about that smoke. Not too terribly concerned, but I am a little bit concerned considering that it is some of the worst air quality anywhere in the world apparently out here. So here is some of that bad smoke in place across Colorado. Let me see if I can even get this to work. My computer seems to be having some issues with memory, even though I have deleted a lot of the files on there. But here you can see that poor air quality in place just to the west of Denver. And even though there should be sunny skies out here, it looks like there are milky skies and almost a high cirrus deck up there. There you can see that sun through the trees. Normally that'd be a very warm sunshine, bright blue skies out here, but you can see that milky sky up above out here is definitely from the Dixie Fire out from California. And look at that apocalyptic sun up there, that kind of weird orange, almost reddish orb directly overhead. And this smoke is relatively high up in the atmosphere, so really going up into the mountains, up closer to the Continental Divide, you're not really going to find a respite from that smoke, as this is coming in over top of all the mountains. It is even getting a little bit trapped beneath those inversions, but pretty much high-level smoke coming in here, and it's all the way down to the ground as well. So definitely a reduction of that air quality is happening out here. And this same system that brought in the smoke does have this slight risk out there. And again, as I mentioned, the greatest threat of a tornado is going to be over western Wisconsin, right along that reinforced warm frontal zone. And this is the latest wrap, so this isn't a forecast, but this is right now. This is at about 1 p.m. Central Time. You can already see a nice blob here, a 4,000 Cape building in across north central Iowa into south central Minnesota. On the other side of that warm front, you still do have this MCS out here across western Wisconsin into far southeastern Minnesota, northeastern Iowa as well. That's helping to reinforce this boundary. So just because there's a complex of storms that is evolving here during midday into the early afternoon doesn't mean that it's going to end the severe weather threat by any means, because you can see rapid destabilization happening here to the south side of that warm front and to the west of that MCS. And that MCS, if anything, is only going to reinforce this warm frontal zone, which is going to be a corridor which could produce a tornado threat this late afternoon and early evening. It is conditional, though, on the presence of a surface-based storm to interact with that warm frontal zone. There is a chance that there's just simply not going to be a surface-based supercell. Some of the models are showing most of the supercells happening on the stable side of the warm front up there into central Wisconsin, up toward the Minneapolis area. And some of those models are showing those storms to be mainly to the north of the surface-based instability that you can see on the surface map here, with temperatures rising well into the mid-80s there into central and northeastern Iowa. And right in the vicinity of this warm frontal zone, you can see temperatures dropping into the 60s and into the lower 70s there. Stable air dominating southwestern Wisconsin. There's still rain falling out there, including in the La Crosse area. Has some light rain falling, 70 over 67 there. But just off to the south across north central Iowa, temperatures warm into the 80s. You have more southerly winds there. And I do expect this warm frontal zone to tighten as we go into the late afternoon hours. And watch this area just to the south of Minneapolis by about 3, 4, 5 p.m. If storms can initiate there, if it can destabilize, then that'll slide off to the east-southeast within that warm frontal zone there into southwestern Wisconsin, southeastern Minnesota, and northeastern Iowa. The HRRR model seems to convect the warm frontal zone. The WRAP model, not quite as much, but it also convects that zone as well. And here is the forecast WRAP for about 0Z. And overlaid on there is the storm relative helicity. And you can see the greatest storm relative helicity is located right within that warm frontal zone, 200 to 300, 0 to 1 kilometer storm relative helicity, more than sufficient for that tornado threat. But you can see that even the WRAP has no storms southwestern Wisconsin into northeastern Iowa, far southeastern corner of Minnesota, because of a strong cap that's in place and because of that stable air as well. A little bit of a lack of some heating. But off here to the west, to the south of Minneapolis, you can see that the WRAP is hinting at a little cluster of likely surface-based supercells that develop to the south of Minneapolis, to the west of La Crosse, and those will certainly have a chance to interact with this warm frontal zone that's really going to be right over the Mississippi River Valley there, across western Wisconsin, maybe into far northeastern Iowa. But a majority of the models still have a lot of the convection elevated above that stable air, and that's going to be across northern Wisconsin into central Minnesota. Those are likely going to be elevated storms. So really the tornado threat depends on the evolution of a cluster of surface-based storms developing just to the south of the Minneapolis-St. Paul area and sliding off to the east-southeast. And again, this is the WRAP model. That is just one model, and I would like to analyze a lot more of those models as well. But first of all, let's take a look at the upper trough that's causing the smoke to arrive here in Colorado. Basically, yesterday it almost looked like a smoke hurricane out there to the west across portions of California and Nevada. Even it had an eye for a little bit on satellite there in the middle, kind of an effective eye, not really an eye within the context at least of tropical cyclones, where you get a lot of sinking air within that donut, a very intense convection that is within the eye wall. But it did look like an eye on satellite for a little while, and it all is because of this trough. There is that trough axis here across the central U.S. A lot of strong winds aloft, strong dry conditions up there across southern British Columbia. Again, that's starting to ignite those wildfires there in the western slope of the northern Rockies up there across southern British Columbia. But it's actually this disturbance here out ahead of the lead ridge here that has excited that complex of storms overnight through the morning hours and continuing through the midday hours here across western Wisconsin. And this trough is lagging behind a little bit, and it's actually going to split your low-level jet into two different modes. There's going to be a low-level jet punching into the central plains there, and then also an intensifying low-level jet that's more associated with the entrance region of this jet streak at 500. This one that's coming through the upper Midwest there. The entrance region of that jet helps to excite a low-level jet that punches into that warm frontal zone into western Wisconsin. The setup definitely looks a little bit different today than it did a couple of days ago, with more of a consolidated upper level trough, even though it is a relatively weak upper level trough. Usually here across the northern plains and the upper Midwest, you only need a subtle increase in the mid-level flow and a little bit of cyclonic curvature aloft to get pretty big outbreaks of severe weather. But in this case, with this trough lagging behind and almost splitting in two, with the southern portion of this trough axis digging south into the central plains, could even bring a backdoor target here across western Kansas. The Storm Prediction Center did extend that slight risk a little bit further south on the front, and that's because of the shape of this trough, almost splitting in two, having a southern mode there in the central plains, and then this northern piece as well across Wisconsin. And you could certainly see the shape of the low-level jet here, basically in two different modes. There at 850, and it is the low-level jet that drives the low-level shear that is necessary for tornadoes, and you need at least 20 to 30 knots, usually about a kilometer above the ground, to realize a big-time tornado threat, unless you get a lot of directional shear that you'll often get out here across the high plains. But you can see a nose of a 40-knot low-level jet there punching into that warm frontal zone into western Wisconsin, far southeastern Minnesota, northeastern Iowa. So the wind shear is definitely going to be there along that warm frontal zone. That's going to be draped pretty close to the Mississippi River Valley there in western Wisconsin, southwestern Wisconsin, northeastern Iowa, southeastern Minnesota. And then here you can see the southern branch of that low-level jet with that trough axis digging south a bit into the central plains. That's exciting a low-level jet that's in excess of 30 knots into the Kansas portion of that mode. So keep an eye out for a backdoor target, maybe an isolated mesoscale accident or a tornado down there in southwestern Kansas, if those cloud bases can be sufficiently low to generate that threat. But really two modes that we're watching: this nose of the low-level jet across western Wisconsin along that reinforced warm frontal zone, and the southern plains as well. Both of these areas have ample bulk shear for supercell potential, so we'll definitely have to be keeping an eye on that as well. So now let's drill down a little bit closer, utilizing the 3-kilometer NAM, and we'll drill a little bit closer to the northern mode target here. And there it is. This is the 3-kilometer NAM. This is the pivotalweather.com website. This is at 21Z. And here you can see this northern mode of the low-level jet that's associated with that entrance region of the mid-level jet. Here you can see that entrance region here at 500, and this is responsible for developing that morning convection as well. And let's see how this low-level jet evolves during the day today. Even though you do have a bit of ridging aloft that you can see there over Minnesota, many of these models are hinting at convective initiation just to the south of Minneapolis, and you can see an increase in the low-level jet, even though it does veer just a little bit as that entrance region slides off to the east in Wisconsin. Still increases in the vicinity of that warm frontal zone, and it is possible that this storm near southeastern Minnesota into western Wisconsin, near the La Crosse area, which right now is, according to the surface map, is at 70 over 67, still relatively stable. But just to the south, across north central, northeastern Iowa, temperatures rising into the 80s, and that instability is on the way. So this is at 0Z. You can see how that low-level jet increases quite a bit, and you can see that hole in the low-level jet there as well. That's a storm, and possibly a surface-based supercell storm that the forecast models are hinting at there. And the 3-kilometer NAM is showing that to have a bow type of a structure to it. So definitely the 3-kilometer NAM is one of those models that really has a lot of elevated storm action across northern Wisconsin on the stable side of that warm front, and then has kind of a stable-looking QLCS bow echo type of a pattern there evolving across western Wisconsin. Initiating first just to the south of Minneapolis, and you can see how you have these cloud streaks there. It almost looks like isentropic lift. Those storms are forming right at the nose of that low-level jet, and they are a little bit elevated there at first. And then as you step forward, it matures into a cluster of elevated storms. And look at these little wave clouds here. That tells me that these are elevated to the north of that warm frontal zone, at least here on the 3-kilometer NAM. It's possible the other models, the HRRR and the RAP, may have these a little bit more surface-based. There is likely to be a mega shelf along the leading edge of this as well. This cluster of storms, likely some damaging winds there as well. The Storm Prediction Center did add a 5% area here for tornadoes along that corridor, but even if this does have a linear configuration to it, likely given the magnitude of the wind shear with that 40-knot southwesterly low-level jet punching into it and that reinforced warm frontal zone helping to back those low-level winds a little bit and decouple the boundary layer just a bit, maximizing that wind shear. I do think that even if you don't get surface-based supercell storms sliding within that warm frontal zone here, draped over the Mississippi River, I still think that there's going to be some embedded tornadoes within this bow echo sliding across western Wisconsin there through 0Z. That's at 7 p.m. Central Time. 8 p.m. you can see kind of a maturation of that bow echo. You never like to use the D word again, but this does look like a long-lived windbag event according to the 3-kilometer NAM. And you even get a little bit of a invigoration back behind it. Here you can see some of the complexes of storms that will develop to the central and southern plains back behind this mode. But this is a textbook bow echo that's going to evolve between about 9 or 10 p.m. into central Wisconsin. The 3-kilometer NAM is one of those models that has a lack of supercell storms within that warm frontal zone draped across the Mississippi River, despite those mid-70s dew points. The ridging aloft there, that MCS continuing through noon into the early afternoon hours, might just be a little bit too much for this setup. Look at that sharp warm frontal zone. That's at 3Z where it kind of pivots around to more of a west-east configuration, whereas so far today it's more of a northwest to southeast configuration, but it sure looks like the 3-kilometer NAM does not have a very good handle on the evolution of this warm front. It lifts it way up to the north into central Wisconsin, but already this morning it's across southwestern Wisconsin. We could see it there on that surface map. So really the 3-kilometer NAM, it seems to bring that warm front way up north into central Wisconsin. It's way aggressive at blasting that warm front off to the north. It's likely not handling the MCS quite as well as some of the other models. We can look at the forecast here for 15Z from the 12Z models. Just doesn't really have that complex of storms ongoing through 1 p.m. or the midday hour. And there actually is a complex of storms right now into southwestern Wisconsin. So the 3-kilometer NAM is not handling that very well. And you'd think that it would develop supercell storms within that warm front corridor, but it is simply not doing that. So let's pivot on over to the HRRR model, which really we're not a big fan of. But if it can get those dew points handled properly, make sure everything's working properly here. Looks like it keeps freezing. So even the HRRR doesn't have a very good handle on this MCS over southwestern Wisconsin at 15Z, which even we go toward 18Z, closer to the time right now, really does not have a great handle on that cluster of storms that is evolving across southwestern Wisconsin, helping to reinforce that warm frontal zone just a bit. It does have a complex of storms developing by midday, ramping up actually up there in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area, elevated convection. Well, it looks like that could even be surface-based based on 0 to 3 kilometer EHIs. So even though the HRRR doesn't have a great handle on that MCS, it still does seem to have the best handle on the positioning of that warm frontal zone draped right across the Mississippi River, southeastern Minnesota, northeastern Iowa, into western Wisconsin. So it does seem to have a better handle on what's happening right about now. But we can go over to the RAP analysis. There's that slight risk extending all the way down into the northern Texas panhandle. We're focusing in on the northern mode right now during this live update here. So there you can see this complex of storms. It is a little bit further northwest. But here at 18Z, you really do not have that mega complex of storms that's developing near Minneapolis, St. Paul that the RAP model most definitely has. Or that the HRRR model most definitely has. And that was the 12Z HRRR. Let's see if the new 16Z HRRR has that. A little better handle on this deal. And there it is. That is the forecast for 19Z. Seems like a much better handle by the updated HRRR, by the 16Z HRRR, and that's why these rapid refresh models are run every hour so that they can reinitialize with what's actually happening. This shows this complex of storms a little bit further south across west central Wisconsin. It does show that warm frontal zone. Not as aggressive with the destabilization further west across southeastern Minnesota as the 12Z models are showing. So that's a trend that's a little bit less favorable for that severe weather. But we know how these outflow boundaries of reinforced warm fronts can work in the middle of the summer in the upper Midwest. And that's why it's still prudent for the SPC to put out that 5% zone, especially because a complex of storms evolving within this strongly sheared warm frontal zone. This is at 20Z, so at 3 p.m. Central Time. And we're using the updated HRRR because it appears to have the best handle on this evolving warm frontal zone. The 16Z HRRR does a pretty good job on it. So by 4 p.m. Central Time, you can see this nice pipe of 0 to 3 kilometer vorticity overlaid with surface-based instability from just to the south of La Crosse through southeastern Minnesota, nosing almost up to the Minneapolis, St. Paul area within that zone. So if storms can develop there to the south of Minneapolis, St. Paul, and then slide southeast, riding that ridge, there is some ridging aloft here now across the upper Midwest that could reduce the potential for surface-based storms developing just to the south of Minneapolis. But this environment does look favorable for a tornado or two. We can look at the environment here in southeastern Minnesota within that 0 to 3 kilometer pipe. Looks like about 80 over 72. The models definitely show the cap breaking, of course, given those low 70s dew points and temperatures rising into the 80s there. A lot of directional shear near that warm frontal zone. Southeasterlies flipping around to westerlies, modest westerlies aloft. And that generates a pretty good hodograph shape for an easterly storm motion at about 15 knots. Carves out quite a bit of instability there, pushing 200, 0 to 1 kilometer storm relative felicity. So if a storm is able to anchor within that warm frontal zone and evolve across this portion of southeastern Minnesota into western Wisconsin, I do think that there is a chance of a tornado or two. And this low-level jet is only going to increase and accelerate into this warm frontal zone that's draped across the Mississippi River Valley there. And you can already start to see some holes in the Cape just to the south and southwest of Minneapolis, definitely showing the development of potentially surface-based storms there. And that's in agreement with the latest RAP model that has been able to update the morning position of that MCS definitely shows that area just to the south of Minneapolis as a cluster of potentially surface-based storms. Many of the models, though, have elevated supercells here across northern Wisconsin on the stable side of the boundary. But this is the mode that we need to watch. This is at 5 to 6 p.m. Storms developing just to the south of Minneapolis. The dominant right movers will have an opportunity to potentially latch onto that warm frontal zone that is draped right across the Mississippi River Valley here, maybe near La Crosse, south of Minneapolis, between that area south of Minneapolis out to La Crosse. Definitely could have some surface-based storms. The HRRR, though, once you lose daytime heating, weakens this mode here. Those surface-based storms lose their ability to stay surface-based within that warm frontal zone. You get a weakening of that western mode there. You don't have a big upper-level storm system that's ejecting into this. This is more of the entrance region of that lead mid-level jet streak, so it does help to proliferate the complex here across northeastern Wisconsin, but really the western edge of that complex loses its ability to latch onto that warm frontal zone. So I see a pretty narrow window here, starting at about 5 p.m. and continuing through about 8 p.m., where there could be some surface-based storms there near and just to the south of Minneapolis. You can see even here at 5 p.m., that's just when they're starting to fire, just to the south of Minneapolis, and that's just as that low-level jet, southwesterly low-level jet is slowly starting to increase. And that's one thing that even though the HRRR looks a little bit more favorable in thermodynamics, by 0Z, not much of a low-level jet. You do have about a decent 30-knot low-level jet there on the cold side of the boundary, central Wisconsin and off to the north. But really not that big low-level jet that the 3-kilometer NAM, the 12Z 3-kilometer NAM is showing, slamming into that warm frontal zone. So even though you do have better thermodynamics, you don't have this ramping up low-level jet that's converging against that warm frontal zone to maintain those surface-based supercells along that warm frontal zone, and they actually quickly weaken by about 8 p.m. So that's why that window is relatively narrow, according to the HRRR. The 3-kilometer NAM, though, the 12Z 3-kilometer NAM, that doesn't seem to have as much of the features organized quite as accurately as the HRRR. Does increase that low-level jet a little bit earlier in the evening, but look at that low-level jet down in the southern plains. That's with that base of the trough out there. Naturally, you get a monster nocturnal low-level jet with those pressure falls off to the west. Look at the low-level jet here in Kansas at 3Z. So let's take a look at 0Z and see how that low-level jet looks. Just starting to ramp up into central Kansas. The HRRR is probably underdoing dew points a little bit, overdoing mixing across western Kansas, but mainly showing this linear mode from central Nebraska down through western Kansas into the northern Texas Panhandle. That's why that slight risk extends down into the northern Texas Panhandle there. Mainly damaging wind gusts expected with these storms. I would suspect that the HRRR probably overmixes those dew points, brings those dew points down into the 50s. So mainly damaging downdraft winds expected down there across the southern high plains, western Kansas into the northern Texas Panhandle. And the 3-kilometer NAM also mixes out those dew points, as you'd expect in midsummer across the southern plains, bringing those dew points down into the 50s here. So mainly damaging downdrafts, big time negative Cape here, temperatures well into the mid-90s. Look at all these little holes here with microbursts carving that out of the Cape, decreasing those temperatures. Big time evaporational cooling. Those microbursts will hit the ground and spread out, leading to some damaging winds, possibly from Texas Panhandle across western Kansas all the way up. And smoke dominating eastern Colorado out there. Tomorrow there could be a little bit of a break with that smoke, just a little bit, but it'll still be very noticeable here across central and eastern Colorado. And then we start to warm up as we get to the core of that anticyclone next week. And there are some days coming up. I know on Tuesday, the 1-year anniversary of our big derecho setup. I need to keep an eye on that as well. That's my next Varsity Tutors course, though, August 10 at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Coming up, we're going to be talking about wild summer weather. That includes hurricanes, wildfires, monsoonal flash floods, and haboobs, and more. But on Tuesday, there could be a setup potential derecho event way out there. Not sure if the 3-kilometer NAM will make it 60 hours. Let's see, it makes it through Monday. So let's take a look at the NAM. There's the system, though, across northern Montana there on Monday evening. It does look like a pretty potent bowling ball of a system there across the northern plains. I'll take it one day forward. And there it is. There is this trough axis. That's why there is that 15% severe weather risk out there across Minnesota, northern Iowa as well. This is a very potent upper level system. Jet stream then gets pushed up into Canada, and that's probably going to mark the return of monsoon conditions across the desert southwest. Maybe open the door for some hurricane intercepts as well. I know there are 3 disturbances out there with a relatively low risk of developing. The low-level jet isn't quite coupled with that strong system, so it definitely does look like a classic windbag derecho type of an event. Very dynamic upper-level system punching into this. A big blob of cape here sitting across Iowa, the same areas, southeastern Minnesota, central and southern Wisconsin out there as well. A lot of bulk shear associated with this dynamic system that could easily help maintain a squall line along its leading edge here. So this is definitely looking like a derecho type of a setup. A lot of diffluence aloft as well, moving over top that MCS, leading to a likely long-lived MCS on Tuesday night. So I could very easily see us doing the Varsity Tutors course at 4 p.m. Eastern. Be sure to sign up if you're a student or a weather enthusiast that's interested in wild summer weather, driven largely by the positioning of these massive sprawling subtropical highs. The western edge of those subtropical highs pumps moisture northward across the southwestern U.S. Sometimes those monster highs could build into a big-time heat dome that could surge up into Canada. We saw some wildfires associated with that across the Pacific Northwest and southern British Columbia. And we're starting to slowly transition towards more of a fall pattern, so I expect that we'll have another active fall season, but we're still kind of Midwest, derecho type season, monsoon type of a pattern, western U.S. smoke, monitoring the tropics to come awake. We're waiting for one of those Madden-Julian oscillations, or MJOs, to be favorably situated across the Atlantic basin to lead to an uptick in that severe weather. But this is Tuesday that we're still watching here, looking out in advance. We're on the 84-hour NAM. And really the composite indices are not picking up on how dynamic of a kinematic environment this is ahead of that very potent trough. The Storm Prediction Center, though, does have that 15% area, that 15% risk out here for the potential development of a derecho event. So that is another system that we will have to keep an eye out. I'm not going to bother dealing with the tropics just yet. 3 low-end tropical waves out there that have the potential to develop. Looking at the long-range models, a couple of those actually recurve along the western edge of the Bermuda High. But one thing I'm seeing in the long-range models that is a little bit concerning is that the western edge, or western lobe of that Bermuda High is starting to extend into the southeastern U.S. once again, which would encourage those hurricanes to pass into the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico and potentially have Gulf Coast or even southeastern U.S. or even northeastern U.S. type impacts Canadian Maritimes as well. But here is that smoke blob sliding off to the southeast. Definitely has invaded eastern Colorado here. Looking out the window, I could definitely see that milky sky out there. Monster smoke plume sliding off to the southeast across portions of western Nebraska right now. Dakotas as well have that smoke plume. And in fact, the poor air quality extends all the way north into the central Canadian prairies from some of those wildfires that are getting reinvigorated across southern British Columbia. You can see those little red plumes start to ignite up there. That's because of that strong jet stream, those strong winds, low relative humidity out there in the western slopes of the northern Rockies, leading to the development of those big pyrocumulus clouds and wildfires out there as well. So keep an eye out later on today, especially just to the south of Minneapolis. Watch that warm frontal zone that right now is being reinforced by that precipitation that is still ongoing. in southern Wisconsin there. You can see temperatures still in the low 70s there across west central Wisconsin. La Crosse, 70 over 67 latest ops. Still getting a little bit of light rain. But just to your southwest, that instability is building. Minneapolis, you're in the 70s. Just to the southwest of you, temperatures warm up into the upper 70s and near 80. And really the potential of tornadoes depends on that area just to the south of Minneapolis breaking out into the sunshine and allowing the development of surface-based storms that might be able to mature along that warm frontal zone. But the HRRR is trending a bit weaker with that low-level jet and even the wind shear along that warm frontal zone, which seems to make more sense considering that it's kind of a fleeting lead jet streak over top of the ridge, and that entrance region is sliding off to the east, helping to sustain that complex of storms over the stable air across northern Wisconsin. So thank you everybody for tuning in to my weather reports. Storm Prediction Center does have that 5% tornado probability along the warm frontal zone along the Mississippi River. I was initially targeting southeastern South Dakota into northeastern Nebraska, but kind of a diffuse trough ejection, really kind of bringing a lot of that upper level energy in the base of the trough into western Kansas, where you have immense temperature dew point spreads out there and more of the potential for kind of some big microbursts and some damaging straight line winds across western Kansas and into the northern Texas panhandle. But I'll be activating chase mode again soon. Maybe as early as next week, just after my varsity tutors class. There could be a reinvigoration of the southwestern U.S. monsoon, and I could easily head back out there to intercept some more debris plugs. And of course, I'm monitoring the tropics with those three amigos, the three disturbances out there in the tropical Atlantic that just have to keep an eye on them, but it is a sign that we are, of course, approaching peak season in the tropical Atlantic. So thank you everybody for tuning in to my live weather report today. I'm going to get back into doing these every single day as we're moving through peak summer and starting to approach the fall season. Have a great rest of your Saturday. Never stop chasing.